This is Access 2019, Module 2, Part 4. In this segment, we will be importing data in from a text file. So let's get back into our Lakewood database. And we're going to be working with the patient table that we just imported in the last step and then modified. One of the things you want to pay attention to before you do your imports is when you're entering data into the table. Make sure that the layout the data is given to you, the order of the fields, matches the order of your fields in your table. If it doesn't, you need to go back and review the steps when you were modifying that layout to make sure it's correct. If you don't do this, then you will find that the import will not work properly. Also, make sure you remember that the primary keys and foreign keys, it's very important even during class that you're careful with entering these because the relationships will not build properly if they do not match between the tables. So the first record we're going to add is a patient ID of 13250. Remembering that the pencil appears, and until the pencil goes away, the data has not been saved. We tab between fields, so they want us to use your last name, so put your own last name in there and your own first name. And then for the date of birth, we'll use 4/9/95. The phone number is 404-555-8445, and the address is 123 Harbor Road. This brings up, make sure when you're typing on your homework, you're very careful that you match exactly the spacing and the punctuation in the upper lower case. Small typing errors in your homework projects can cause significant point losses if you're not careful. Atlanta is the city. Notice that Georgia defaulted in. That was from our setup when we put a default value in the state field. So unless it's a different state, you don't have to type anything in that field. The zip code is 30303, and the email is student@example.com. Then we have 13287. Last name is Perez. P-E-R-E-Z. First name is Louis, L-U-I-S. 113088. Phone number 404-555-59003. Address is 78 Winborne, W-I-N-B-O-R-N-E Drive. It's Decatur, D-E-C-A-T-U-R, Georgia, 30030. L.Perez 12@example.com. So once you have those in, if you want to resize your fields, you can do that. If you do resize the fields so that they display better, you will need to make sure you save that change because the width of the fields being displayed is a structural change and it must be saved. And when you're done, you can close the patient table. You want to remember that anytime you import data into a table, the table must be closed. You cannot import into an open table. Alright, so our importing is all done on the External Data tab. We have imports and exports being done on this tab. In the import and link group, we are going to start a new data source, and this time we are going to be importing from a text file. So we're going to choose from a file and from a text file. So it opens up a wizard, and we're going to go ahead and locate that file that we want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and browse. Yours is probably under an Access1 folder and a module folder within that. You're looking for the file called support_ac_2_patient text. And click on that and say open. We are appending records to an existing table, so we're going to choose the second option. And like we talked about when we were appending records into from the Excel import, it's going to default to the first table in the list alphabetically. So we need to make sure that we change this so that it's bringing it into the patient table. We're going to click OK. And now it's going to be showing us the data that's inside our table. I want to explain to you a few of the things that you're going to see on this and what the questions are meaning. I'm also going to explain while we're looking at this screen what it's going to ask us next. Alright, so the first question is asking us, is this a fixed width file or a delimited file? A delimited file means there's a character separating each field. And if you look at your data here, there are commas separating each of the fields. It could be a comma, you sometimes see tabs. Those are the most common ones that I see. But there are other options as well. A fixed width column, you would see distinct columns of data with blank space in between them. And the reason you'd see a lot of blank space is, for example, if the last name field is 25 characters in length, maybe, or 30. I don't recall how long it is, but let's just say it's 30 characters long. So Davis is 5 characters. You would then have 25 spaces before the first name would start. So each field would have its own column that it starts in all the way down the file. You would have a lot of blank space indicating how many blanks were left in the field given that piece of information. So it correctly answered that this is a delimited file. Access is pretty good from the imports I've tried to do at identifying the file type, but I do think it is still helpful to understand the questions that they're asking us. On the next screen, it's going to ask us a couple of additional questions. The first one is going to be, what is separating our fields? And so in this example, you can see that it's a comma that's separating the fields. Well, the next thing it asks us is, what is a text qualifier? So if you notice, all of the text fields are enclosed in quotes. That's really important because let's say that Alex Olson was Alex Olson Jr. And so his last name would read Olson, comma, Jr. And if that was not enclosed in quotes, it would see that comma and it would assume that that was separating the fields. So then it would become Olson is the last name, Jr. is the first name, Alex would be in the birth date field, and so as you can see, it would throw all of the other fields off because it would assume that that comma was a separator and not a part of the data. So in order to prevent that, they put a qualifier around the text fields, and in this case, it is a quote. So we're going to go ahead and say next. It is delimited. You can see that it identified our text qualifier that we were just talking about, and you can see there are a few options. And they also correctly identified what was separating the fields, and it broke our fields into columns to show us what the data looks like before we continue with our import. So if all of these questions are answered correctly, we simply say next. And now it says it's importing into the patient table, and I'm finishing. We have already talked about saving the import steps and that you only need to do that if you're going to be repeating this import several times more on a regular basis. So we're going to close this. And if you open up the table, patient table, you will see that it added a lot of additional records into our table. One thing you might want to do is, as you scroll down, is you've got a few fields that are not being fully displayed, such as the city. So we might want to resize that field. Maybe resize the email address or the zip code. So you can resize your fields as needed. If you do resize them, you want to go ahead and save those changes before you close the table.